Ian, why don't you introduce us?
Hey, and welcome to the Hostility in the Morning podcast. I'm Ian, joined here today by...
Steven.
Matthew.
Nathan.
John.
I totally forgot our name for a second. That's just the theme for today of I forgetting everything.
Well, when you're just put on the spot randomly for the first time ever, I mean, you know.
Look, he
fine.
wanted to talk, so I gave him an opportunity to discuss.
And John, it could be worse. I could attempt Mongolian throat singing.
Please
Is that
don't.
when they do like 4 chords at once or something like that? Or 4 notes at once while they're singing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you can go for it.
Mhm.
I feel like that would be a great paywall.
Nah, maybe
piece
another
of
time.
content.
Or you destroy your vocal cords.
Either way, it's content.
I mean,
You're not wrong.
It's true.
No. So when we
I'd
finally
like
get
to
around
actually have
to
some visibility to our content before I do that.
when we finally get around to getting some kind of like sandal sponsor, and we're doing like the Steven's doing the foot modeling, instead of having a pre-made track for it, he can do the Mongolian throat singing.
Why would we have a sandal sponsor?
And why do you think my feet would be the
We've
one
had this
best suited
conversation
for
before.
this?
You're the one that's always wearing Crocs.
I have a
So yours aren't gonna
semi-on
look quite as
But
pasty
Crocs
white as
isn't
the
a
rest of ours.
sandal.
Yeah.
It's not a sandal.
No, not really.
Not
That's
at
closer
all.
to a sandal
Slider.
than a tennis shoe.
It's a slider. Get out. just get out.
I have a question.
What's your question?
When did Word add a dictate notion or button
Ooh,
to it?
That's an interesting.
Because it just highlighted it for me. There is a dictate button.
At least a few
Did they actually
weeks
add a
ago,
useful feature to Word?
they've actually been adding some fairly decent features recently.
I bet it's powered by Copilot.
It is. It
You
is.
dictate to Copilot.
You can also transcribe things
Huh.
under this button.
But like, transcribe what?
Oh wait, no, my volume's off.
Because your volume's supposed to be off.
I know. I was gonna transcribe our show notes, the one line that it is.
But transcribe
to
it
see-
to what?
It look. It just says transcribe, and it has a little sound thing on it.
But
You could pull up a previous show notes and then hit transcribe and see what it does.
does
I
it-
mean, there's words on here.
this is true, but transcribe means to basically copy from one place to another. So
Yeah.
what is it transcribing to?
I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be. It's not transcribe is a very bad word for it. It's supposed to be. I'm going to read to you what's on the screen.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a okay. I
That's just
based on the icon,
Text to
I agree with
speech.
you. That's kind of what I got the gist of. But it
The
makes no
word on
sense.
it is terrible.
Yeah, it's a poor choice in words. Dictate obviously is very straightforward.
Yeah.
But so
We don't have a plan.
not having a plan as a
Is-
form of planning is
Yeah.
this what we're gonna
This
go
is
with?
where Matthew can jump in.
okay. So the idea for this came from a conversation I had with one of my coworkers last week, where we were talking about compile time semantics, which I won't go too far into that. But basically, the idea
Nerd.
is, do what?
Nerd.
You're speaking to a bunch of nerds.
I'm aware.
But
But you're like the nerd of the nerds right now.
I'm
I'm the king
talking
of
to
the
y'all,
nerds.
you out there too.
Yeah, so the idea behind it is that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Like if your compile time semantics are 100% correct, that's great. But that only lasts as long until that only lasts until the user gets their hands on it, and then they figure out a way to break everything.
Like John with video games.
Yeah.
Or John with most software.
Or my
Yeah.
buddy with his PSP in his forehead when it cracked in half.
You really like that story, don't you?
Yeah.
Love
It's
that
hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, so hold on, let me see if I have like a good summary of this.
Maybe Word can transcribe it for you.
Yeah, so compile time semantics. Basically, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. What are situations where planning and implementation didn't line up, and how did you end up handling it?
Typically, I scream at the sky.
You
You
go
yell
outside.
At you yell at the physical clouds, and then you
Yeah.
go back to yelling at the digital clouds.
Well, I mean, yes, because you can only yell at a screen for so long because it doesn't respond back. At least if you yell at the sky, sometimes, a neighbor will respond. Sometimes a nice policeman may show up at the door, and sometimes an animal may just, tell you to shut the heck up. You never know what could happen. It's a good time.
What if you opened up like Copilot or Bing or something and had the the voice recorder turned on while you're yelling at it.
No.
But beforehand, you
No.
tell it to, or you could do this with a local model, which would probably be better knowing what comes out of your mouth.
Yes. The local model is much
But you
easier
preface
to.
it with, I am yelling at you, and you are to be absolutely apologetic and, just tell me what
Oh,
I
it's fine.
want
I
to
already
hear.
gaslight
And
like
then that
public
way,
AIs.
it can respond to you, so you get at least a little bit of feedback.
That could be.
While you're-
I think that could be a very lucrative model for
This could
AI.
be a therapeutic tool. This could be
Yeah.
like a rage
You
room.
could design a
but
specific,
AI.
I have an
specifically
idea.
design a language model that is intended for a response to yelling into the universe in consolation for whatever you're angry about.
I have a better idea. It writes your emails while you're yelling at it, but it turns everything you say into a professional statement.
It translates
Yes.
it into
Like, you effing moron, blah 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 blah. It says, "Excuse me, sir."
So what you're saying
the
is
corporate
that I.
speak translation
Yes.
AI.
So you're saying that I can stop editing other people's emails now and just have the AI
That
do it?
would be its intention.
You
Yeah.
just described a significant
wait.
part of my
I don't know why he
unofficial
kept
job.
looking at me. Like, I don't understand.
Oh, he looked at me too.
Yeah, that's right.
This could be like the universal translator from Star Trek, but instead of translating between different languages, it's just translating from rage to professional
Yeah.
speak.
hmm
Yeah.
Which that kind of is different languages.
And
Yeah.
just for clarification for the listeners, Nathan asks us to do this as far as his contribution to interpreting
Nathan is the
initial
email
drafts
transcriber.
of emails to professional final drafts of emails.
Ask sometimes it is sent to me. Sometimes it is a. So you're sending me that email before you send it, right?
My favorite is always just hitting him with a wall of text going, "You deal with this now. Let me know. Does this sound hostile enough but still professional that my point gets across, but it's not going to be an HR event?"
And my response is
Per my
normally,
last email.
I say that a lot.
and my response typically is, okay, paragraphs 2 and 6, no. I've rewritten them for you.
And see? Yeah, now to have the AI do it, it's great. Even though technically I already kind of do that with ChatGPT, but I'm a little more choosy with which emails I...
And
I feed it.
Copilot would be the perfect platform for this
No, 'cause
because
we-
it can simply draw from every graph API in all of 365 from all of Outlook email and have its language model.
Do you want to try to convince multiple people that that's worth spending $360 annually on?
per user.
Do you think?
No,
that,
it's not per user.
It's not per user.
Per tenant.
Oh, Microsoft's just going to push it out to everybody here pretty soon.
Is
You're
the
not gonna
Graph
have to pay
API
for
or
it.
Copilot? Because Copilot is a
Co-
per user.
It's all
charge.
pretty much per
So
user.
Copilot,
That's true. They're gonna do the whole thing where they launch something that has this kind of outrageous price and they end up giving it away.
Oh yeah.
how it was described to me through one of our license vendors, it's $360 annually for a tenant to access Copilot, and then as long as you have a business or higher license, you have full access to Copilot.
Interesting.
For now.
Well, it won't be for now because Microsoft, yes, they may tack it on or have a slightly higher fee to it, but they want that data. They want you to use their
Oh no,
AI.
I'm saying that they will. I'm saying the opposite. No, I'm saying that in the reasonably near future, they are going to just include it with everything, and it's just going to be on. You're not going to be able to get around it. It's just going to
A
be
free
part
version of it, yes.
yeah.
Microsoft is very good at giving you here's the little taste. Here's what you could potentially do.
The part of it that is gathering information is going to be a part of everyone's 365. The part of it that's actually useful to the end user, that's robust, is going to be.
giving
I mean,
information
they
back.
do that already now. I mean, just go look at all the telemetry they have built into Windows.
Oh, yeah.
We're just going to tap into that same market.
Yeah. This is just going to be a more souped up version.
Yes.
So back to the plan.
So what is the
What
punch?
plan?
What's the punch in the face that we could do to Microsoft to throw off this Copilot?
I don't think we can discuss that on a public forum.
Oh darn!
I mean, the best we could do is feed bad data. We just can't describe. The
I don't
bad
think we
data
can
that
discuss
would be
this on a
feeding.
public forum.
So speaking of bad data, my analogy here for having plans and stuff is that whatever your plan is, that's the fan, and whatever the plan is supposed to interact with, that's the crap. So how do you handle it when crap hits the fan?
Well,
Because typically, at least in my line of work, the idea is mitigation. Because
Y'all
crap
aren't
will
gonna
hit
like
the
my
fan.
answer.
Yeah.
Crap will hit the fan. So it's just how can you mitigate the crap hitting the fan?
it's not just even mitigation.
And,
Mitigation is one part of it. The other section is like whatever plan that you're doing, what is your fallback and what is your secondary? Because your fallback should always be, all right, if we're trying to say
The second fan.
yeah, yes. If we're trying to implement, say like you with a new like public update to one of your main web portals that users access into every day, and you push a bad update out.
Which I have done before, I will be honest.
What is your plan? Do you try to fix it live? Do you roll it back? These are some of the things that you have to start thinking into. Like when I'm going through some of the projects that I do, which I mean we're uplifting an entire organization's main core systems that they use day in and day out. If something happens during that process, our only opportunities there is either you put your head down and you push through it and fix it until it is working, or you roll the entire thing back and you just schedule it out another time.
I think in my opinion, I think there's two key points. This isn't necessarily a thorough answer to your question as far as like a scenario or a full set of steps, but I think two key steps in any planning phase, any implementation phase of anything are necessary to even have a chance at mitigating something that goes wrong. In my opinion, these are two things that I always look for. Anytime I'm a part of rolling out something like Jonathan's talking about, any kind of change, or if I'm responsible for it. If I'm involved in any way, I try to make sure these two things are present. And that is, don't make, and this, not just like the tasks as a whole, not just the project as a whole that you're doing, but each step of it, each step of the way through the whole thing. Make sure that each step is reversible. Make sure that nothing you do, no step that you take throughout the whole process, you are not capable of stepping back, taking that step back immediately if necessary.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
And reverting back to the previous step, or even just reverting back to the beginning if it all goes to crap, right? So having the ability to, at any given point, always having the ability to go back to hit the undo button for all intents and purposes, for a step or for the whole process. And then two is always have a means of testing the results of what you've done or what you're doing. So like whatever it is you're rolling out, don't ever do any. Always have a means of verifying a positive result from a step you take or from the whole process.
Just assume that it works.
No.
You should be confident in your
Validate.
skill set to be able to
Validate.
know when I put this change in that I've done thousands of times, it just works.
So what I'm hearing from Steven's side here is that make sure that you run everything through test, right? Validate everything, check your results, cross your T's, dot your I's, all that. And then from John, just deploy straight to production, let the users test it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Do it live.
By the way, don't do that. Please don't do that. I have, as Steven's actually already seen, I like having very detailed oriented rollout plans for, especially the complexity and things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of pitfalls or things that if you try to memorize this or you think you have a grasp on this, it's very easy for you to skip something or miss something or misconfigure something, where this is going to be extremely detrimental to the rest of the project or to the user experience, or you're going to do something to cause a deadline to be missed or have a very large pile of crap sitting on your desk the very next day. So what I always tell everyone is when you're looking into make a plan and do a implementation of any kind, it could be from just a simple, hey, we're going to do just a basic Windows deployment plan for updating all the workstations, say from 10 to 11, or from even just installing a new piece of software across multiple machines to the point of even you uplifting entire organization to a new platform. Write out what you need to do. Go through every single step that you think needs to happen. Go through your testing phase to validate each of those steps are there, and if anything is missing, add it. And then before you roll all of this out to production, do, as much as you can, a small-scale test in the live production. Mitigate that risk as much as you potentially can, because with everything you've done to that point, you should know all of your pitfalls, and if the crap truly hits the fan, what is the worst case scenario that you need to be prepped for. If you do all of that, you should be good and set to go whenever life goes ahead and just throws that cow pie at you.
Breaking one user is really in most cases fine, provided
It's not the CEO.
You have prepared the user with the we're doing something new, this might die, and you've done everything you possibly can to make sure that that can be recovered from very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good response, and that's an overrated or an underrated aspect of planning a project or planning a task in general is communication. Communication is very important, and you should definitely
keep everyone in the dark.
Communicate before, during, and after.
Like setting up a warning dialogue on an application.
But qualifying the work you're about to do is, I think, an underrated step in giving fair warning of, in the planning phase, like talk to your point of contact, and then major users that are going to be major parts of this thing you're changing. Just be like, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. This is roughly what the always overestimate. 100% always overestimate. However long you think it's going to take, double it. That's what you tell them.
I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah,
Yep.
don't ever.
And then have a 20% buffer over top of that.
Don't
Scotty
ever
was
tell
right.
users, points of contact, managers, whatever. Do not ever tell them how long you think it's going to take. You take what you think it's going to take, and you double it plus a little bit, and that's what you tell them, because it's always better to over-deliver than to overestimate and over-deliver than the opposite.
Over promise, under deliver.
That
everything.
one, yeah.
Scotty was correct.
But Scotty doesn't know.
No, Scotty doesn't know.
Don't
No,
tell
no, we
Scotty.
don't need a copyright strike.
As long
Isn't
as you
like
don't tell
13
him.
seconds is fair use?
Something
Oh,
like
in that case, anyway.
Belt it
Steven?
out. Mongolian throat singing. Let's go.
I was gonna say, Stephen, who originally sung that song?
Who originally sung the song? Oh, Matt Damon.
Let's let Matt Damon sing that, okay?
Okay.
But you could do a Mongolian throat singing parody of
I
it.
could hum to it. Can I hum it?
I find it really interesting listening to you guys talking about this, because it is almost completely different coming from my perspective as a essentially project-focused consultant. Because most of the time I have a very limited number of hours to work with. So I go into it with a plan, and I tell them, hey, this is the plan. And then I actively seek out all the problems so that I can filter out and funnel the change orders into the actual project.
Funnel the crap into the toilet away from the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually a very interesting perspective there.
Y'all actually use change orders?
No.
Well,
Oh, okay. I was like, people actually use those?
No.
it'd be nice.
Yeah.
No, because that is an interesting viewpoint, because in all the positions that I've been a part of, it's either my boss's job or it's my job to actually dictate how many hours this is going to take, and then we tell the client, hey, it's going to take this long, are you okay with that? And even if they're not okay with it, we tell them, tough, it's going to take this long, we're sorry, we'll do what we can to move up the timetable, but that is what it is.
I always hate being asked that question.
Well,
Yeah.
I
How
at
long
least,
do you think this is going to take?
yeah, I at least have, I've done it long enough now, I can give pretty solid estimates based off of certain scale size of the impact of what the project is actually going to be scoped for and things of that nature, where I can tell you, hey, if we're going to be moving your email system, you have this many users, it's going to be estimated it's going to take this amount of time, here's kind of our expected start and cutover dates, things of that nature, here's your initial scope of impact, here are your actual downtimes and things to expect and all that nature. But that did not happen overnight. That came from literally doing this now for years to develop that, have that knowledge and understanding and perspective, and be able to actually write that out in the project plan and prep everyone for it on the forefront before you go and do it live.
And then for those who are in very large, very old environments, it is not uncommon to have situations where you aren't going to know. You won't have a way to fully test everything, because you don't know if certain dependencies exist. If you have a very large base of homebrewed applications that have been around for 20 years, probably everyone that wrote them aren't going to be there anymore, and the documentation was either terrible or doesn't exist.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how many times I would get an email from one of our developers when I worked at a different, very large corporation. I get an email because I was also one of the main testers for any sort of changes. And I was not on any testing team. I was very much an end user, but I knew how things were supposed to work. I knew how the business worked, and I would actually give our developers useful feedback, as in like I would take screenshots. I give numbered bullet points. I go here, I go here, I go here. This happens, this cannot happen. And they generally appreciated that. I don't know how many times a developer would say, "Hey, we're worked on this. We're rolling this out. See any issues, let me know." Clock hits whatever, thing rolls out. 30 minutes later, someone starts yelling, "Hey, this isn't working." Okay, cool. I get up, I go over, I look at what they're doing. Cool. Go back to my machine, duplicate it. I am the developer. Hey, this is what's broken. Usually within about 2 to 5 minutes, the developer is over my shoulder, literally, like physically, like, show me. I do it. Here's what it is. Okay, fine. Goes off to the desk. I honestly, especially in those types of environments, I really don't care how horribly it blows up, provided we were A, given warning, we were B, given specific individuals to talk to. I am a massive proponent of for your general issues, you 100% should go through whatever the order of escalation is. You go to your help desk, you go to your level 2, level 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If something new is being rolled out, no. At least for those internally, internals should not be going to operations to level 3, level 4, et cetera. No. You have a developer that you go straight to.
Yep.
And that's for a very limited window. Once everything's been ironed out, then you go back to your normal escalation procedures. But when
In
something
the
new
vast
rolls,
majority of cases, yes.
when something new rolls out, it is on that developer's head.
That's something kind of a policy that I've always. It's kind of an unspoken policy, but I've always kind of tried to follow that from my limited role in things like this. If I'm going to be responsible for doing some kind of a software upgrade or a network implementation, some sort of big change like that I'm a part of. I've had to verbalize it at least once or twice, but most of the time it's fairly nonverbal. As in when they try to reach back out after it's all done, I ignore them. But yeah, I agree that day-to-day operation, especially just being like normal IT support, you go through the process. I'm going to make you go through the process. You can reach out to me directly. I'm just going to forward you support and ignore you. But I fully accept the responsibility. When when I've had the preliminary conversations with the point of contact, when I have put together the plan, when I have communicated the plan and said and scheduled the change and said, all right, we're going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, then I fully accept the responsibility of day of implementation, day after implementation, and okay, how's everybody doing, how's it working, is everything good, are there any problems? I'm responsible during that period of that initial, all right, let's see how this goes. And then once everyone establishes that we're all good, it's all working the way that we wanted it to, we're check done, then I'm like, all right, cool, we're back to standard fare, we're back to normal procedure. Don't talk to me unless I talk to you first, or unless you've worked up unless you've gone through the normal procedure. But yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Like there's those certain instances of doing specific work, making major changes, doing specific there does need to be at the very least a middle tier team or individuals that are privy to the work that's been done and being done, who can do more than just read the script and waste your time let's just be honest, for a lot of things, waste your time until you get to the person that actually knows what's going on.
Yes, and the other situation where it's kind of the reverse plan, and I would say that this is where communication is by far the most important. Is again, if you're in a very large or very old environment, we don't know what is on the server. We have no way of really figuring out what is on the server, so we're turning it off to see what happens.
Now, I do have a question. I want to go back to Ian's point.
Oh, the scream test.
Because yes, and the scream test is very much a valid test for project implementation. But
What's the scream test?
we'll get to that in a second.
Okay. Is this similar to the smoke test?
No.
Okay.
So Ian, when you say that, so obviously I get that you have much more stringent timelines because y'all are contracted based on time, essentially, right?
There's only so much time to adapt.
Yeah.
It's more like there's only so much money available, which correlates to there's so
Correlates
much
to time.
time. Yeah.
But the work that you normally do, are the projects for like building net new things, or is there a larger majority of projects that are fixing existing in production things?
Define in production.
So like you talk about building dashboards and stuff a lot, to access databases and visualize data that's either already there or that's going to exist in the future. Some of the contracted projects that you do, like here's existing databases that we have, here are existing dashboards we have, and they absolutely suck, and we want you to fix them.
Sometimes.
Okay.
More often than not, here we have an existing database. It has data, but we don't know how to use it. So we need you to make a net new dashboard.
So for all intents and purposes, in those cases, the work that you're doing is you can get in there and just go ham, and it's not anything you do, any given thing that you do, change you make, what have you, is not being disruptive to a user somewhere.
Most of the time, no. We do have, there are times where stuff like that does happen, but if we just roll it out into a dev environment with a limited user base to test it out before we actually roll it into production.
And what's that like?
It's pretty nice.
It's got to be really nice.
Most of the time, anyway.
Now, there is, however, a very important aspect of having a dev environment, and that is it actually has to mirror the production environment.
So it's actually effective and accurate.
I know this is a shocking concept to some people,
Or revelation to some.
that too. But for you to have a proper development environment, it must 100% mirror your production environment.
That's where it actually is sometimes very easy for me that I don't really have to worry about it, because with the tools like Tableau, Power BI, Salesforce's CRMA, most of that is already in a essentially live data or live production area. You just basically throw another little twig off the side of it. It's all connected into it. You're just testing it off to the side.
So does it ever mess you up, like if you're working on one of those types of projects and it's let's say it's a situation you described where it's like we have this pool of data, we have no clue what to do with it, and we need you to build something that actually does something with it. Well, let's say it's not quite to that degree. It's like we have this pool of data and we know how to use like this little bitty tiny square, like we pull from a little bit of it and we have this real simple thing that we made, but it's like like a toddler developer made it, like it's just a little thing. We need you to actually make a robust dashboard or something to utilize it. And in your process, in what you're doing, they're actively changing data in this one little section, but you actually need to do stuff with that section during your process. Is that something that could cause some kind of an issue that's going to cause someone to scream and be like, oh my gosh, we're not able to do this one little thing we do because something changed or they locked down this part of the database or something like that?
Well, quick side note on that little baby developer, that's an Excel sheet. But most of the time,
You mean
no.
the thing that basically runs our business world?
Yes, or DOS 4.0, as we were previously mentioning about large corporations running on old systems, which just got open sourced.
Lord.
That's a whole story. Right
Yeah.
there.
That'll be another
Oh,
episode.
no.
Yeah, DOS 4.0 is open source now.
Oh, okay, we're gonna put a pin in
We're
this.
just gonna sidestep that for now.
We need to use. We're using this for content
But-
later.
I can't think of a single thing that could go wrong.
But normally, no. There should be no issues with me touching a live data set that other people are using and pulling data from it, because all that should be happening, if everything is set up correctly, is basically my dashboard, whatever system I'm using to create said dashboard and do create the analytical tool for the client, is just going out, copying that data.
It's just
and-
calling on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it the best way to do it. Now, okay, if you are everybody out there, if you are a dashboard developer, data analyst, anything like that, if you're using a live connection, you need to have a good reason. It is if you need to be creating extracts for it now. If you're not, you all you're doing is slowing down your data. You're slowing down the dashboard and making that end user experience absolutely terrible if you're using live data. But if you just use that extract, you literally just go out, call it once. It essentially stores everything locally, and you just work on that until you need to call it again.
Okay. Well, that all sounds very nice and mostly straightforward, and we
Not
have
at
to,
all what I have to deal with
yeah,
on a
we
daily
have to deal with a
basis.
lot more headache.
But
than
a lot
that.
of it comes down to that way because I spend a little bit of extra time, maybe a few hours at the front, or I am able to at the front, going out and looking for all those potential scope changes and saying, okay, yeah, we can do that, and being really nice about it, like, yeah, we could totally do that. It'll only add like 30 more hours to this, and they start running the numbers, and they're like, oh, we can't afford that.
No.
No, because that's a
Can you do it in 5?
Yeah, because
No.
that's really interesting because it's similar to like how what we do when like we migrate, say, a client from their current file hosting platform to something like SharePoint or Azure Files. It's in a similar manner because we're able to look at the forefront of here's where your data resides, here's how you're accessing it, here's your permission subsets, things of that nature, how often you're uploading, downloading, things of that nature to the actual host. We're able to take that same information, copy the majority of it into the new platform, either SharePoint or Azure Files, and then assign permission subsets, get people in there and start looking at it, where it's their actual one-to-one data, but it's actually technically split because it's now copied between both hosts. So they can still be actively working in one while looking at and figuring out, hey, does this actually look the way it's supposed to? Is this acting the way it's supposed to? Things of that nature in the new platform before we fully cut them over. So that's a staged like project roll up for what we can do for a platform uplift. Not so much for everything else that I currently do, like email systems.
Oh God.
You cannot do
Well,
that.
that's something I'll agree. I think that has a part of the business technology infrastructure that has massively improved just in I mean really in the past decade, but even in the nearer term than that is are these built-in tools to different platforms and or even third-party tools that have just improved over time, where it gives you the ability to do more of that active syncing and copying or mirroring over, like doing that gradual process, as opposed to, all right, you want to move all your files from this platform over to this platform. Cool. We're going to hit go and it's going to move it. And while it's moving, you can't use it at all. I mean, and now but it has matured in such a way. Well, but even for email stuff, you're using certain tools like Migration Wiz and stuff. It will do those active syncs of mailboxes over time.
It actively moves it.
And-
You can do a full bulk caching, essentially, where it will take the first
Yeah.
like 30, 60, 90 days of mail, copy that into the new email host. So when you cut over on whatever cutover date you choose, they already have their most up-to-date email, and then everything that is actually being synced over, which is another direct pull copy, is all their archival based information or anything past that specific date from when you did your initial sync.
And that's usually all you need until you somehow get to our clients, which just so happen on the day of the cutover to need an email that they sent 5 years ago, and it's for a critical sale that they need to make. And gosh darn it,
Their
why
mailbox
is
is 50
why is
gigs
100% of my 50 gig mailbox not present right this second for me to get to this ancient email?
How many
Sorry.
emails is that? Because
It's a
unless
it depends.
unless it is like just chock full of files and
usually are.
images and everything
They
else
often
like that.
are.
They
lots of
often are.
lots of attachments, images.
Most people use their
large
email
chains.
as a file storage
Yes.
and transfers.
No.
Yeah,
Yes,
and hosting
100%.
and hosting platforms for different things. So like I know an organization that I had to help resolve this for is their entire quote unquote CRM solution is using public folders inside of their email host system that they are then sharing this internally and externally out.
Public folders, like
Public folders.
folders that are stored on their server that anybody can go access.
Not like that. Public folders inside of Exchange are folders that you can basically map, quote unquote, like a network drive inside of your Outlook instance that you can coexistently dump, move, and host different emails, files, attachments, calendars, things of that nature.
Okay, hang
all
on.
inside of
My first
one
question is,
subset.
why is that even a thing to begin with? What is the actual?
Doesn't it act like almost pseudo like a distribution group? Isn't it kind of
Kinda.
function like
So
that?
old school. It's very old school.
It is
Okay.
it is Microsoft's old school like one of their first
Oh,
major collaboration kind of
So this
features they built.
And they just never killed it like they should have.
This is
It's
like
in
this is like
365
this
still
is like
to this
people
day.
still using Access.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Very similar.
Only worse.
The most
because at least with
robust of
access,
the database softwares.
Yeah.
At least with access, it's very easy to get a CSV or something like that out of it.
Yeah, of a public folder, it is a royal pain to move that because you're talking most of Microsoft's other native like hosting platforms cannot take
Use
that
a
format.
freaking Excel file at this point.
What would have been better for everyone is if they actually would have hosted all of this out of a single person's OneDrive and shared it out that way than doing it in this method.
Which
this
you
goes-
still should never do.
Ideally
Don't
should not do.
that.
But this goes back to, because again, it's because like Microsoft's back at Microsoft 365 on when you look at the surface of it, they paint this really pretty picture of all of these interconnecting pieces of this whole big platform, and it's a nice connected solid picture of a platform, right?
Like Google Sheets.
At
yeah.
its core still, and Jonathan, correct me if I misspeak here, but really at its core there are a few big pieces, and all of the other little pieces are the things that kind of connect them together to make it look like one thing. So those pieces are Microsoft Exchange, the back-end platform of just Exchange handles, email, things that are in Outlook, and also Teams messages. Those are actually based on the Exchange platform.
No wonder it's
Yeah.
so slow.
And then you have the OneDrive platform. And the OneDrive platform handles all things file storage. So
including SharePoint.
including SharePoint, including when you create a team and there's the files section, it does create a SharePoint per team, but all of that still
a
operates
site.
core on the OneDrive backend. And then you have Azure. Azure's the big main platform over everything.
Well, Azure Platform as a Service.
Yeah.
And then you have Entra ID.
Entra ID, yeah.
Which was
But those
known
are-
as Azure AD beforehand.
But
yeah.
those are all big columns. Those are all independent platforms, and then everything else about 365 is just a kind of a mesh like facade over that, or something that interconnects parts of those pillars to create this this other app that
So
operates.
something that you can definitely learn from this when you're building out projects and that crap it's fan scenario is at least have a cohesive narrative, theme, or understanding of when you're doing this project or you're pitching this project and building it out. What is the actual intended purpose of this? And what is your desired end result?
You know what that reminds me of? The Adobe Suite.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's very similar.
How so?
Well, Adobe had multiple different products that they've supported for years. You had Acrobat, Audition, Photoshop,
Premiere.
Premiere, all of these different separate softwares that they had to buy individual licenses for, similar to how Microsoft had it, where they had Exchange, they had the Office applications that you would buy. You would have multiple other plethoras of items. And Microsoft and Adobe and Google and all these other organizations, what they kind of went and took at and looked at, here's our catalog of products that we have. What could we do to help bundle all these together and sell them one monthly flat fee to get them into our ecosystem and keep them there? Adobe did this back in, I think it was like, what, 2012, 2013?
Somewhere around in there.
Somewhere around in there, where they took their main core software suites that they had, bundled it all together, got rid of all the perpetual licenses, and said, if you want our products, you have to pay us a monthly subscription or an annual subscription.
But with Adobe, you have things like, for instance, with the, like, if you get the photographer bundle and you've got Lightroom, Photoshop, and whatever the cataloging software is, you know, you've got certain, you know, each of those softwares is its own thing and its own pillar with its own coding and independent software coding. But there's certain ones that, you know, they have built in with the cloud model avenues between them. So again, like you can, you know, bring a photo into Lightroom and make an edit to it and get it all set up with your filing system within that software. And then, oh, I want to make this other fancy change to it. It has the export to Photoshop, and it has that connector to photo. Even those are two very separate things. Is built in those. I can export to Photoshop. I can make a more detailed edit or whatever to it in Photoshop, and then whatever the thing is, you can bring it right back into Lightroom and go from there. I think that would be that's an example of like where it's similar to 365, and like 365 has these, again, Teams is not its own thing. Teams is a facade over several of the pillars of Microsoft's products, and it just has all these different connectors that ties different
Teams-
pieces of it together.
It's like the single pane of glass, how you access
Yeah.
a lot of those additional features.
Teams is a crap fan, is what it is.
Yes,
There is no crap hitting the fan. It's a fan made out of crap.
That's true. Well, it's because, and going back to what I was saying about having a cohesive identity to all of this, Teams doesn't have a cohesive identity. It is at its nature, Microsoft's trying to build its own dedicated collaboration application out of Teams, but it has a separate chat functionality. It then has for direct DMs. It then has the actual team sites, which then has its own different chat functionalities in there, and file sharing and other integrations of that side. Then you have this separate calendar integration that also goes back to team sites or distribution groups or to direct individuals.
Oh, isn't the this is intertenant, not like what like Teams phone. That's a whole different thing. But like the actual call function in Team when you're calling somebody directly in Teams, isn't that still built on the old Skype for Business backend?
Yes, that's 100%.
Skype for Business is alive from well. Just in case everyone didn't know that,
Yeah.
it's just called calling in Teams.
Well, no, Skype for Business, actually, you can still technically buy licenses.
Oh, can
for
you
it.
still just use Skype for Business?
Skype for Business technically still exists.
That's hilarious.
Do we recommend
don't
it or
miss-
sell it? No.
I don't miss Skype for Business.
No, it's all. But
I did
so
not enjoy using it.
Teams is such a mess because then you even bring up Teams Phone, which
Oh, that's
Teams
a whole nother.
phone is
That's a whole nother thing.
absolute
Yeah.
nightmare of actually getting that thing working.
But
the way
yeah,
it's
I think
supposed to.
another thing to be said too, and this is I hesitate to. I don't want to say this. I'll qualify this statement by saying, this may not. Your mileage may vary. This may not apply to everybody. It may not apply to every single solitary scenario. But a thing that can also save you a lot of headache. That can only help you in kind of scenario like kind of what Matthew's talking about, where it always seems like something goes wrong every time there's a project or anytime you roll something out. The better whatever platform it is that you are working in, the more familiar you are with it, the more, I mean, not just on paper, but like you can visualize the
Inner
structure
workings
of
of it.
it, inner
Yeah.
workings of it in your
Yeah.
head, and you can
Yeah.
think through the whole process without even, looking at the better you know it, the more capable you are going to be of impromptu fixing problems, pivoting, reacting to something.
100%.
It's this a lot of times comes with experience. It just comes with being in the trenches and going through these processes. There's
Yeah.
just, that's part of it.
But one thing that helps a lot is if it's there, read the freaking manual. I'm not
100%.
joking on this. Just read the
Documentation?
documentation.
What?
I will admit, this happened to me yesterday, actually, where I was assigned a ticket from my boss, and I ended up going back and asking a couple questions because I was kind of confused. And the problem was I didn't read through the whole ticket. I just kind of jumped to his note at the end. So I could have saved myself some trouble there. But yeah,
That does help as
read
well.
the manual, read the tickets. Don't
Well,
skimp over stuff.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into, I mean, again, this is where the preparation phase is very important. Don't just, when you're in the preparation phase, don't limit yourself to even the scope of, see, how do I say this? When you're thinking about the solution to a problem,
Think outside
or
the
when
ticket.
when you're thinking about the end product of a project, think outside the project scope. Think about, okay, this thing that I'm making this update, that I'm making this change to, how do they actually use it? What is the day-to-day use of this look like? And what does it touch? What does the whole picture look like? The bigger the
Yes.
picture you have of what this has to do with, the farther ahead you can see issues,
Yes.
and plan for them.
So many disasters that I've had to deal with over the years were because project managers did what they did to set scope was look at the previous project plan and just use that, which that was wrong to begin with. And then the developer then hides behind not, that's not to scope. And even though we tell them, if you do this, it's going to break. Oh, well, we can't touch anything with that because that's not in scope. Well, then go take
See,
it
that's
back to
where my
whatever.
other solution to all of this comes in, and y'all aren't going to like it. There is another solution to this as far as planning
Leave
goes.
the normies behind.
No,
Oh, no, this isn't a normie problem at
just
all.
don't plan.
So there is something to be said for having
I
a plan.
I say that
advance.
pseudo jokingly, but but to a point, there is a time and a place for don't plan.
There's also something to be said. There's also something to be said for being adaptable. I think it's
Yes.
better to have some kind of plan going into it rather than no plan at all, but also not being so rigid with we have to stick to this plan no matter what.
That's more of the
there's a balance.
There's
the bigger
always going to
balance.
be some complications
Yeah.
that you're going to have to deal with, and that's where having a bit of a Swiss Army knife type of skill set really kind of helps and aids in that nature. And that comes with just years of experience or being able to be mentored by someone who honestly really knows their crap. Helps a ton in those really kind of crucial hours.
Yeah.
And
So you should just become a obsessive individual who always, studies different things all the time, and you should just get into absolutely every facet of technology in the industry and just know all the things
You
about
need
all
to
the
bring
things.
out your innertism.
Please,
Don't,
I mean,
don't
it's
forget,
not
don't
a
forget to
bad
read
thing.
every single white paper that is
Yes,
possibly available.
all the white papers.
Absorb
Yeah.
the manual. Become the manual.
Which
I'm
means
not
don't
saying-
sleep.
I'm
You
not
should
saying
no
that's-
sleep. That you don't
listen.
need that.
Now,
Listen.
I've painted myself a pretty picture over here, being like, oh, I rarely have any problems. So that's still not true, even with the way that I do it, because even with all the crap that I am able to filter out. For example, I have this project that I'm currently working on. I was given 33 hours for this thing. We got to hour 30, and the client decides to pull someone else into this meeting because they're the ones in charge of setting up this new system that's being built.
They didn't think it would be important for them to be in the first meeting.
Yeah.
I've been
Especially
that
when
person
these
before.
people are building their Power BI environment. While I'm working in their Power BI environment, but they don't have rules for the Power BI environment. That's what these guys are doing, is making these rules. Yay. 10 more hours. At least a 33% increase in the time that I'm needed on this project. is going to get added to this because they were not even thought of at the beginning.
They didn't bother inviting one person to the planning meeting.
Yeah.
And corporate America must be nice.
Yeah, those
Must be
last
great.
minute additional details
Mhm.
drive me up the wall. I have one user in particular, which off air I can add some more details. This particular user, we were creating some changes to said user requested, but said user did not give us all the details. So over the course of I think like 4 or 5 months, what started out, we had a plan. I had a plan based on the information I was given to set up a basically a form to collect information, which is 99% of my job is setting up forms to collect information. But then the workflow on the other end, that's the bread and butter that we do. Like if you just need to collect information, we have Office 365. You can use Microsoft Forms. When it comes to having a workflow of some kind attached to the back end of it to process said form, that's where we shine. So anyway, I had something set up and ready to go, and we demo it for the user, and the user goes, well, but this isn't what I need. Like, I need XYZ feature, which had not been discussed previously. Said user goes, oh, well, it's, this is in my spreadsheet. I did not know that a spreadsheet existed at this point. So I was like, all right, can you send us either the spreadsheet that you use or an example of the spreadsheet so that we can kind of see how you work and what you do with it and then go from there. So I get the spreadsheet, I make some tweaks. I have a revised plan that I start working on. I demo some new features to adapt to what said user has requested. And then the user goes, oh, well, but this doesn't do ABC, which I have in my Word document.
Oh, that brings me to another point on the same project. I had something similar where we've gone through everything, and one of the things that I filtered out was, are you sure you don't want this split into 2 different dashboards? They're like, no, we can fit it all in one. Halfway through, hey, can you make this into 2?
Yeah, those last minute
Mhm.
it's just, and it's nothing that I
Quiet
could have
indecision, yeah.
like I can only give so many details, right? But it's nothing that I could have foreseen, right? Because
Yeah.
I've done everything I can
Well,
to
yeah,
say, hey,
obviously you
what
could
do
have
you
if
need?
you had just read
How
their
to do it?
mind.
Just this particular user is very, very, very good at withholding information.
Well, it's because you don't read their mind. You're supposed to do that.
And it was just so annoying. So there was the
Through
first
text,
spreadsheet.
too.
There was a Word document that was then provided that said, hey, this is where I keep a lot of the information. So when the user gets requests, they record a bunch of stuff in the Word document. They keep track of like the overall stuff in the spreadsheet. So basically like a table, and then you can click on a row in the table. This is what I ended up creating was you have a table. You click on a row in the table to open up the request, and then you go through the request and you review the information, right? So what the user was doing was had this spread across like 5 different documents. 2 spreadsheets and a Word document. So like the spreadsheets were to keep track of the summarized information, and then the Word document was to have all of the information.
Hey, do
and
you
it
want
was
me to
just
create a
very-
dashboard for you?
Why?
Can you all
Because
hire his company to like build something that makes
we
sense?
shouldn't have to. That's the thing. We shouldn't have to because I did build something.
I'm
that
seeing
made
a
no sense.
business opportunity here.
So anyway, that was kind of annoying. So one of the
You're
things
getting all
that,
kinds of referrals from this group.
I love it. Yeah,
One of the
your buddy
things-
needs to push a little harder.
Yeah, right.
yeah. One of the things that I did set up because to the user's defense, one thing that we weren't able to do was rich text. So with our current framework, we didn't have a component that supported rich text since we build web applications. We use Blazor. Blazor doesn't have anything built in, and we didn't have any libraries that we either used or trusted that supported a rich text environment.
I feel bad saying this. Can you give a brief top level description of what rich text is?
What rich text is, so any bold, italic,
Uh-huh.
any kind of text decoration.
Okay.
Any kind of text decoration.
Okay,
that
you
can
have
think
the
of.
base numeral.
If it's
you
not
have-
on your keyboard, Like, and it does something like
It's
the
not
text
the
does-
default
yeah.
thing the keyboard produces.
Yeah.
Anything. Okay, gotcha.
Any kind of color.
Sorry, I've heard
um,
rich text
no,
my
yes, that's
entire
a fair
career,
question.
and I've
That's a fair
never
question.
understood actually
So,
what rich
but
text
but
is.
does that include like special characters like the copyright symbol and stuff like that?
If you can paste it in, then it's fine. Like if it has a character code attached to it, which in that case it does, then that's fine. It's for coloring text or italicizing text.
A lot of text
Bolding,
formatting.
So bolding. Okay.
Yeah,
What-
formatting. That's
What
another
about
part of it.
Bluetooth? My keyboard has 3 Bluetooth symbols on it. Can that be included in there?
So anyway, we didn't at the time support rich text. So what I did, and this was because we were running up on crunch time, and this was, hey, this is actually going to be an issue. I would argue that most of what the user says is an issue is not an issue. This is also the kind of user that every single email they send is
This
marked
is
as
all
important.
because of a workflow that the user has created and refuses to change from, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I
Yes,
understand
which creates
exactly
a nightmare
what-
for the
yeah.
rest of us. And when said user retires or leaves or dies or what have you,
The process dies with them.
that's the goal. But what we're trying to do is save the person that has to come in after them from a lot of heartache, because right now it's a mess.
Well, you can do that. The new person can come in. You can sit down with them and say, okay, here's your process. Well, is this how the last person? No. Here's your process.
So that's the idea. That's the idea. Because and
you stare them in the eyes.
I hope
directly.
that I get to be one of the first people to hear, assuming said user doesn't outlast me, which I would not be surprised. Out of like sheer spite and
Yeah.
will, like I wouldn't be surprised if I leave before they do. But anyway, where was I? Rich text. Yeah, so rich text is an actual format, like .rtf. That's a Microsoft format. It's a pain to work with. So what we ended up going with was something that I could create on the fly pretty quick, was a markdown editor. And it's not a pretty markdown editor. It's just you put in the syntax and then you can swap between edit and preview. And when you're previewing it, then you can see all of the text decoration in action. So I rolled that out. The funniest part of this whole thing was that all sorts of stuff the user was like complaining about and pushing back on and everything. Because part of the application that we were updating was on the this user is an admin. There's other users that use the application that this user's opinion doesn't really matter when it comes to how that side of the application functioned. But they felt the need to comment on literally everything. So they spent a whole lot of time pushing back on all that stuff. They didn't push back on the markdown editor, which I was surprised. I was thinking that, old dog new tricks weren't going to like it. They actually thought it was pretty cool. So I was pretty happy with that. We're in the process of replacing it with a HTML editor, which on the back end it just uses HTML as the backing format instead of markdown. But on the user side of things, it's a WYSIWYG editor. So they don't see any of
what
that.
now?
What you see is what you get.
Oh.
That's WYSIWYG.
Okay.
It's an acronym. So kind of like GUI. I hate GUI as the
I know.
acronym.
I used to have an issue with that too.
I usually pronounce it as GUI, but I've kind of given up. Like it
It's
doesn't.
like moist.
I don't
I
really
love
mind moist. I
yeah.
just GUI just seems
yeah,
kind of weird.
I know what you mean. I've gotten over that a bit, but yeah, initially I was the same.
Yeah, WYSIWYG. I stick with that just because
gonna use that. I
trying to
like that.
remember the whole acronym like WY. What I don't even
Use
know.
that on a
WYSIWYG.
date.
Anyway, it's going to be a much more user friendly. So nobody has to remember the syntax of it's asterisks for bold text. It's underscores for underline.
WYSIWYG.
All that. It's you just. You have your toolbar with the
Yeah.
different buttons. It supports and this is a third
What
party
you're
thing.
seeing
This
on the
isn't something I
screen
built.
is going to be the result
Exactly.
at the end of it.
Yeah, there's additional formatting options which are not provided with Markdown, or at least my implementation of a Markdown editor and the subset of Markdown that I was able to support in such a short time frame. There's that. There's keyboard shortcuts as well, which is not something that I wanted to include, but I wasn't able to figure out the best way of doing it. This has it. This is a third-party component that has it built in, so it's great. So I'm excited to roll this one out, and I think what's probably going to happen is they're going to be upset about it because it's another change. Even if it's a better change that should make it easier for them to use, they're going to be upset about it.
And you know what you can do at the point that they get upset about this change? You can send them a response immediately after, and it's a link to a developer boot camp course.
That would be hilarious. So one of the ways
If
that
they
I've
have
gotten
that
around,
much of a problem with it, they can learn to fix it themselves.
yeah, one of the ways that I've got around some of the users' complaints was when I first started overhauling the application that they use on a daily basis. I was given the task to add features to it, and it just became so it was already convoluted because it had gone through 4 different developers before me. Each of those developers did not like the state it was in and were just bolting on features, and they kept telling themselves, we'll come back to it later and fix it. So
Yes.
the buck got to stop with me, and I finally went to my boss and I said, hey, here's what I see. Everybody agrees that this is an awful application. Nobody likes the state that it's in. So here's what I can do to fix it. Here's some things that I can overhaul. We already had a good excuse because we were moving to a new UI framework, which is user interface. So we were updating the GUI of the application and then rolling out that. So there was a huge front end refresh, which with that we can tie in a lot of back end refreshes. And the story that I gave to the user was not, hey, is this okay? It was, hey, we are updating the application to meet our current standard. And like best
and
practices
that is an
and stuff.
important thing to be
Yes.
able to think on the fly, to say whenever you have either a little oopsie in the project where you're having to make a quick change, being able to disguise that of going, hey, we noticed there's an issue right here. We're currently addressing this on the back end. We'll let you know when it's resolved.
Yeah.
Like changing a DNS record during production hours.
Who does that? We don't do that around here.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll take 5 minutes.
It did. It updated.
30 minutes later.
It updated in 5 minutes. It took a long time to propagate through all the other DNS providers.
But it just so happened that Microsoft had an issue during that time, right? That they were having
100%.
a boop. Yeah.
Did the person
100%.
who implemented this, did his name rhyme with Dawn?
The name may or may not have rhymed with Dawn.
It did not rhyme with Dawn. I don't know who Dawn is, but I do know who we are. We're Hostility in the Morning, and thank you for listening to us and hearing our rambles and our conversations. Nathan, you want to go ahead and close us out? Where can the people find us?
You can find us on X, Twitter, at HitMShow, HITM Show. Instagram, Hostility in the Morning. Facebook, Hostility in the Morning. You can find shows and everything else at hostilityinthemorning.substack.com. And Matthew, what's the last one?
HostilityInTheMorning.com.
What is
That's
that?
the most important one. That is our
The
website,
place where you can find all those other things.
which should have a refresh coming, which nobody will care about. This is,
Ooh.
again, one of those like front end, back end changes and stuff. This was more just because I own it.
You didn't
and I
say
can do
anything
that.
about touching our back end.
I'm not
Yeah, we
touching
didn't provide
your back
consent.
end.
Also, I
We
don't
also didn't give a safe
remember
word.
what I said earlier, so it'll be interesting to listen back and see what I actually said. It's hostilityinthemorning.substack.com.
Yes.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah,
I
we
did?
haven't shelled out the $50 for the custom URL yet.
And it is on the website, but just to add to the list, you can also find us on YouTube at Hostility in the Morning.
Adding that to the docket.
Well, I've been your host, John, joined here today by
Nathan.
Matthew.
Steven.
Ian.
Stay Hostile.